Today, we're going to be going over some of the more minute details when building a ProGCC v3 controller. More specifically, we're going to be going over the minus capture button area, as well as how to make sure that all of your buttons feel good. Keep in mind, we are working with entirely aftermarket sets of parts here, so there will be some modifications that need to be made. We'll first start with pre-assembling the controller up until the point of where we get to the minus capture button. We'll also go over a few other small details, such as trimming up the bumper buttons to reduce friction and making them feel better. To jump right into that, let's go ahead and add all of our membranes for the shoulder buttons. From there, we can go ahead and begin to trim away the L and the R buttons. All I do is run the edge of a hobby knife along this back edge of the button. This removes any of the burrs and makes it so that it no longer interacts with the frame, meaning that it should just press smoothly. You don't have to do too much, just a few passes along the edge. From there, you can go ahead and continue reassembling the controller. We will be using an extreme rate shell for this example. All you have to do is place your capture button into the spot where it goes in the shell. Run your finger across the button from the front, and you shouldn't feel any resistance. However, if you feel any resistance whatsoever from the button, then you'll need to modify the button to make it move more freely in the shell. This goes for both extreme rate and OEM styled shells. Any shell, you want to go ahead and make sure that these buttons move freely. For trimming the capture button, we recommend taking a hobby knife and using it to clear out the two channels that the button rides on. You don't need to do much, just a few passes of the blade without much pressure should remove enough material for the button to move smoothly. Once you've repeated this on both sides of the button, you can go ahead and reinsert it into the shell and perform the same test with your finger on the front of the controller, seeing if you feel any resistance. If you feel no resistance, then you should be good to continue on building your controller. Once you've gotten to the point of where most of your front half of the controller is assembled, you'll want to go ahead and flip over the controller and test your buttons. If you still notice that your capture button is feeling like it's trapped and not able to move, then you may need to modify the extreme rate shell, or your OEM styled shell. To do that, we recommend taking it back apart and trimming up the two posts that the button sits on. Once again, it's the same process as trimming the button. Essentially just run the edge of the X-Acto knife or hobby knife over the edge of the plastic. You should notice that the paint begins to scrape off, and that's how you know you're making progress. You shouldn't need to do too much, a couple passes per side. Test your button again. You may need to continue repeating this process until you have a working capture and minus button when all the screws are fully seated. These same principles can be applied to the minus button. All you have to do is run your blade across the track that the button sits on. This will give it more room in between the PCB and the controller, making the button feel better when it gets pressed. When you're fully assembling the controller, the 4 screws at the top can also affect the membranes and how the buttons press. So as you install them, make sure you keep testing the buttons, and if you feel like one of the membranes begins to get too tight, just go ahead and back that screw off a quarter turn. It's also worth noting that these shells are customized using our engraving service. These aren't something that we sell directly on the website. So if you're looking for a product like this, please be sure to check out our engraving service linked below. The engraving service allows us to create two-tone patterns in whatever color you want and white. This allows us to create custom controllers as well as unique designs for things like Halloween. As far as stuck buttons and button feels go, that's how we've been resolving all of our issues with the minus and capture button. This can also apply if you have issues with the plus button as well. If you want to see more content like this, please be sure to subscribe, check out our wiki link below, and as always, thanks for watching.